Have you ever wondered if you can build scalable applications and programs using just your mobile device? If yes, then in this playlist I'm going to show you exactly how you can build scalable programs using only your mobile device. If you are excited as I am, let's get right into it. The following video is an introductory video to a larger playlist on YouTube. This video explains the software we need to install in our environment to make it ready for programming. So before we get started, let's understand what Kaggle is. Kaggle is an ecosystem that combines a Cloud IDE, a data warehouse, and a competitive arena to enable people, engineers, come together and build applications, build machine learning models, deep learning frameworks, and understand the ecosystem of programming, machine learning, AI. There are various competitions that you can join. You can use it for portfolio building. You can use it to get access to compute power, such as GPUs, TPUs, even CPUs. So if you're someone who does not have a very good high capacity laptop, you can use this to your advantage because it is entirely free. You don't need any money to start. You don't need to even input your credit card. All you need is an email address. So that is Kaggle. Kaggle is a Cloud IDE that you can use for coding, for programming, and the capacity is high. You can get up to 30 plus hours of coding for free on Kaggle. So without further much ado, let's see how you can get started. So all you have to do to get started is to go to kaggle.com and create an account. Creating an account is free and you don't need a credit card. So once you create an account, you'll be taken to the home page with the welcome message, and you're going to need a notebook. So to create a notebook, all you have to do is tap the blue plus icon at the top left hand corner of the interface like this. And so once you tap the blue plus icon, you're going to see a few options. But since you want to create a notebook, you're just going to tap the notebook option. There. Now we can see that we have created a new notebook with a generic ID. We're going to cancel out this input section here because it's going to make our interface crunched. Since we're on a small mobile device, we don't want a very small interface. Hence, we are going to cancel it out, and I've just done that. You can cancel it by clicking the top left X icon at the top left hand corner of the interface. Sorry, top right hand corner. Now we're going to rename the notebook because we don't want the notebook to have a generic ID. We want the notebook to have a specific name that will help us to identify it easily from other notebooks. So to rename it, we're just going to name this one API practice. And in order to save this name, you just have to click anywhere on the screen. Now, if you notice something at the top right corner, there's a message there that says draft session off, run a cell to start. We do not want our session to be off because without having a turned on session, you cannot run any code. And also, we need Jupyter to run our code. Hence, we need to create a new cell. To create a new cell, you just have to click on the top left corner, the black plus icon at the top left corner. I'm just going to click it right now. And as you can see, a new cell has been created. Now, in order to start our session, we just have to run this cell. So we're just going to input a random code, an introductory code to this cell. This is the conventional introductory code for most courses. So we're just going to input the hello world text and we're going to run this cell.
And to run the cell, you just need to click the play. You need to click the play button at the left hand side of the cell, and you're going to see at the top right corner, you're going to see draft session starting, and now the session is running. So our output has been given, and we can see there it says hello world. And now we can go ahead with deleting this previous cell, the pre-existing cell that was here initially. So you can just delete it like this. Now that the cell has been deleted, we can go on setting our environment up. So we're going to create another cell, and we're going to input a few commands. Now we need to run a system command to install software using the pip keyword. But before we do that, we need to tell Kaggle that we are referring to the underlined Linux terminal and not our Python interpreter, because we do not want to communicate with the Python interpreter since this is a system command. And this exclamation character is the escape character that we're going to be using in this case. And this escape character tells Kaggle that we are speaking to the underlying Linux terminal and not the Python interpreter. So we are going to call on pip, and pip stands for pip installs packages. It is a recursive acronym. So what pip is sort of like the app store for Python. It is what is used to install software that works with Python. So it is sort of like Play Store but for Python.
So this is a small snapshot from the pip documentation version 25.3. It tells us that pip is the package installer for Python, and that you can use it to install packages from Python package index or PyPI and other indexes. You can learn about how to use pip with the resources in their documentation, and I'm going to leave a link to their official documentation in the description of this video.
You can install various software from it using the pip keyword. Now we're going to input the install keyword. This install keyword is sort of like saying, hey pip, download and set up the following things I'm about to tell you, or I'm about to list. So other keywords could include uninstall or list. So now we're going to impute a few things that we'll be needing. So some of those things include FastAPI, but we do need FastAPI traditionally though. So this is the documentation for FastAPI, and the link to this documentation will also be placed in the description of this video. But before you go on digging in on the documentation, let me just give you a little background explanation for what FastAPI is, and a basic way to understand how it works and how it functions and why we need it. FastAPI is a modern web framework for building APIs. It's sort of like, you can think of it like we're building a restaurant, and FastAPI is sort of like the blueprint for building the kitchen of the restaurant. FastAPI is basically the code rules for setting up our API. It's what is going to enable us to build the logic for our API. We'll also be needing UVCon.
UVCon is an ASGI server. For the newbies in the chat, ASGI stands for Asynchronous Server Gateway Interface.
UVCon is sort of like the waiter that takes the orders from the outside world, say for example our front end. In order for a front end or a service like Postman to communicate with our API, which is the kitchen, we need a waiter or an order guy that collects the orders from these customers. We can refer to our front end like a customer. Now UVCon is the one that runs the entire restaurant. So normally FastAPI is the application, but the application cannot run itself. Hence we need a software that is going to run this application for us, and that is the job of UVCon. So you can think of UVCon like the waiter guy that takes orders and channels these orders to the kitchen.
Or FastAPI.
Now this is also the documentation for UVCon. The link to this documentation would also be left in the description of this video, so you can dig in and get as much information as you want.
Yeah.
Now we're going to install ngrok. ngrok is sort of like a tunnel. Now the kitchen is locked. There's security guards in the kitchen that does not allow people to enter. This is Kaggle. The kitchen is like Kaggle now. Kaggle doesn't want any external APIs to access it. You cannot access our API because Kaggle is a cloud server, and any API or program inside the cloud server is locked away. No external front end or postman can access it. And that's why we need ngrok. ngrok is like a Python wrapper. It creates a tunnel into our cloud server so that front end can send data to our API inside the server. This is also the documentation for ngrok. If you want to get more information about ngrok, you can use the link in the description for ngrok. So it is also always advised to read the documentation of this software so that you can get a grasp of the variations to use cases that could exist. So I hope it's all coming together in your head so you understand why we are installing softwares. Now another software we need to install is SQLAlchemy. SQLAlchemy is basically a translator. You can think of SQLAlchemy as a translator. Let's say, for example, you go to our restaurant, and for example, our restaurant is a Chinese restaurant and you don't understand how to speak Chinese. All you need to do is to tell the translator in the restaurant that you want to order this type of food, and the translator is going to translate what you said. So SQLAlchemy is like that translator because it translates our Python object. We are writing Python code, but SQLAlchemy translates this Python code to SQL queries or SQL code so that we can be able to speak to our database without having to write raw SQL code. So just like a translator translates foreign languages, SQLAlchemy translates our Python objects and Python logic to raw SQL code so that we can communicate properly with our database. So this is the documentation for SQLAlchemy. You can also check the link in the description to get access to this documentation and read it to get more information. So we'll be needing another software. We'll be needing scopg2 binary. But before we'll be installing scopg2, we need to install another software that will enable us to patch Python, to tell Python that we do not want to forbid an event loop from being inside another event loop. UVCon creates an event loop, and a Kaggle notebook is already an event loop inside the cloud server. Hence, an event loop cannot be inside another event loop. Based on Python's rules, Python forbids event loops from being inside event loop. Another video will be uploaded on the playlist to explain event loops better. So for us to patch Python and tell Python that we want to have an event loop inside another event loop, then we need to install NestAsyncio. That's the name of the software. So this is the hack. We are hacking Python now and patching it and telling it that it's okay to have an event loop inside another event loop. So the documentation for NestAsyncio is on GitHub, and you can also check it out at your own convenience. So now that we know what NestAsyncio does, let us see what scopg2 binary does. scopg2 binary is like the adapter to our database. It's what connects our environment to an external database like PostgreSQL. So without this scopg tool, even if we translate our Python object or our Python code to raw SQL code using SQLAlchemy, we cannot really communicate or send these instructions to a database without scopg tool. Hence, we need to install this software so that we can be able to take the functions that are pre-existing in this software and use it in our own code. Now that we have all the code that we need and all the softwares that we need listed, we can go ahead and run this code and see what happens. So to run this code like we did initially, we can just tap on the left play button like this. So because we have been stagnant in this notebook and we've been writing the code, the session stops to save computing power. Now that we've tapped on the play button, this draft session is starting all over again so that we can be able to run this our code. So as we can see, all our packages have been installed and now the environment is ready. We can now call Postgres, we can call other services that would be required to ensure that all the environmental variables are well placed. This is going to be in the next video in the playlist. I'm making these videos as short as possible so that those that are living in areas where there's no stable internet connection and you cannot really download large videos, you'll be able to download it as little as you can, bit by bit, so that you can take the information bit by bit. So now that we have all our softwares and packages installed, we can now go ahead calling our database and creating a user and also creating a record. So I hope to see you in the next video and stay safe.